Okay, the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, in the second chapter of Hilchos Tshuva, so he says as follows. I want to read it to you, and we're going to, base our discussion on this. Right? That says, "Vuketz mechila v'slichli." So it is the edge of forgiveness for the Jewish people. Lefikach chayavin hakol la'asos tshuva l'isvadas b'yom HaKippurim. And therefore, everyone must do tshuva and do the confession on Yom Kippur. Okay? Now, and then the Rambam proceeds to say that we have a special halacha that even on Erev Yom Kippur, a mincha, before we eat our final Suda, we confess there also, lest, God forbid, a person have a mishap and he won't have a chance on Yom Kippur, any mishap of any type, right? So, but what interests me are two things over here, right? The Rambam says Yom Kippur is a time of tshuva for all, right? Like, what does the Rambam mean by it? It's a time of tshuva, be it for the individual, be it for the masses. Let's say, let's contrast that to, let's take, for example, the first day of Sukkot. First day of Sukkot is a time, to, sit in Sukkah and to shake lulav. The Rambam doesn't say over there, it's a time for be it for the individual, be it for the masses. Like, what does the Rambam say? It's a time, be it for obviously, if it's a mitzvah incumbent upon everyone, right? So, of course, it's for the individual and it's for the masses, right? Right, there's something strange. Rambam's trying to get a point across, and it's a bit mysterious what that point is. The Rambam doesn't write, let's say, in his laws that on Seder night, be it the individual, be it the masses, everyone has to sit down to a Seder. Right? So, there's something he means over here. So there's a message trying to create, say, be it for the individual, be it for the masses, and we have to understand what that is. I hope this question is clear. All right? Another question that we have over here is that the Rambam seemingly is contradicting himself. Right? The Rambam, in the beginning of the laws of tshuva, makes it very clear that there is neither a particular obligation to do tshuva, nor a particular time. The Rambam just says, at the very opening of the laws of tshuva, kishiyas tshuva, whenever a person does tshuva and ceases to sin, so then kicks in an obligation to confess. Right? But there's no particular date, and there's not even a particular obligation to do tshuva. Rambam just says, whenever a person decides to do tshuva, at that point, a obligation to say vidui, to confess, will kick in, right? But there's no mitzvah to do tshuva. There's no particular time to do tshuva, seemingly, right? That's what the Rambam says. And yet the Rambam over here says in the Rambam that we just mentioned, no, Yom Kippur is a time to do tshuva, and everyone must do tshuva, and because everyone must do tshuva, therefore everyone must confess. Because once you do tshuva, an obligation to confess the sin kicks in, since you're doing tshuva. Right? So, so we have to understand, there seems to be a contradiction here. Is there an obligation to do tshuva? Right? Is there not an obligation to do tshuva? Right? Is there a particular time to do tshuva? Is there not? I think we have a contradiction between what the Ram wrote at the beginning of the laws of tshuva and what he writes at the end, right? Now, thirdly, right, and this is the hardest point to understand, right? And that is what the Rambam writes, Bu ketz mechil v'slicha l'Yisrael. Yom Kippur is the edge, ketz means edge, end or edge. It is the end or edge of forgiveness for the Jewish people, and therefore, because of that, everyone must do tshuva and confess on Yom Kippur. Right? What does he mean? It is the edge of forgiveness, and therefore everyone must do tshuva and confess on Yom Kippur. Right? I want to add one more question. I hope everyone's keeping track of the questions. Right? I want to add one more question. We know, that women are exempt from time-related positive commandments. For instance, a woman does not have to eat or sleep in a sukkah or shake lulav, because these are positive commandments that are on the calendar. Right? So, it's mitzvah saseh shazman grama. A woman doesn't have to do it, right? The reason why a woman is obligated in the laws of Seder night that she has to eat matzah is only because we have a special derivation from the fact that the Torah equated eating matzah with the prohibition of eating chametz. So we say whoever is prohibited to eat chametz must eat matzah, right? But that's an exception to the rule. The general rule is women are exempt from time-related positive commandments. Okay? So, but the Rambam says, Yom Kippur is a time to do tshuva. No, neither is not time-related. Neither is circumstance-related. It's not time-related. Whenever she has blood, so they have to separate. That's not time. That's circumstance. A positive commandment that results of circumstance, right? But it's right. But this would be the calendar. The calendar causes it. So if the Rambam, if we were to take the Rambam literally, right? So the Rambam's saying, well, Yom Kippur is a time where you have to do tshuva. Does that mean that women are exempt? Women do not have to do tshuva on Yom Kippur? Clearly not, because the Rambam says very openly, both the individual and the masses, and Rambam sums it up, Lefikach, and since Yom Kippur is this edge of forgiveness, and we haven't defined what that means yet. What does the Rambam mean to tell us? It's the edge of forgiveness. It's probably the hardest thing to understand in this Rambam. It's the edge of forgiveness. Therefore, Chayav and Akol, everyone must do tshuva and confess on Yom Kippur. Everyone obviously includes women, right? So, we have to understand, what is the Rambam trying to tell us over here, and to reconcile him with what he wrote at the beginning of the laws of tshuva. Okay? So, to understand this, to give a little bit of an insight into this, and this will be an insight into the entirety of the nature of Yom Kippur. Right? We know that Yom Kippur was the day when there was a temple. When there was a temple, so the Kohen Gadol entered the holiest of holies, which is prohibited to do year-round. Right? Year-round. That area is off limits. It's like God's domain, and no man can go in there, right? So there's the two are mentioned together. The prohibition of going into the holiest of holies year round is mentioned back to back with the exception to the rule, and that being Yom Kippur. So hear this well. When the Torah laid down the prohibition of going in to the holiest of holies, so the Torah said, do not come at any time to the holiest of holies. Do not come at any time. So Chazal are bothered that, wait a minute, the way the prohibition is stated, it's as if it includes Yom Kippur. Because the verse literally said, do not come at any time to the holiest of holies. Right? And then the Torah turns around and says, but with this, you could go in, and that's on Yom Kippur. Right? So Chazal bothered that there's a contradiction between the rule and the exception to the rule, because the rule seemed to say any time, literally. Right? And then the Torah further goes on to say, right, no person should be in the holiest of holies, at the time that the Kohen Gadol goes in. It's only for the Kohen Gadol, but the Torah literally said, no Adam, no man should be in the holiest of holies. So Chazal are again bothered. But wait a minute. The Kohen Gadol is an Adam also. The Kohen Gadol is a human being also. The Torah says even on Yom Kippur, no man should be in the holiest of holies, right? No man. The Kohen Gadol is a man also. So listen to what Chazal say, right, regarding both these questions. That seemingly at no time would also include Yom Kippur, right? No man would include the Kohen Gadol. So regarding, the latter question, no man, so the Yerushalmi says something very interesting. The Yerushalmi says, well, the Kohen Gadol is not a regular human being, right? At the time that he goes into the holiest of holies, he ascends to the level of angels, right? And we're going to come back to that, that concept, right? He's not a human being at the time that he goes into the holiest of holies. On Yom Kippur, he ascends to the level of angels, right? And the Sifrei, rather the Sifra, right? And Medrash Halacha says regarding the issue of all time. So all time, the prohibition of being in the holiest at any time, all time, seemingly should include Yom Kippur. So the Sifra answers, well, Yom Kippur, in essence, it says the following idea: Yom Kippur is not another time. Yom Kippur is all time. Yom Kippur is not just another day of the year, it's like all time. Right? It's very interesting. Right? There's some very deep metaphysical ideas being said over here that we will, do our best to try to decode. Right? And with this, we'll also understand many other customs that we have on Yom Kippur. Right? So, to try to understand this, right? Understand what Yom Kippur is. So the Gemara says that Ha-Satan, the Satan is numerical values, Gematria 364. Right, so the Gemara asks, there's 365 days in the year. Right? So says the Gemara, the 365th day, of the year, Satan doesn't operate. He's off. And that 365th day is Yom Kippur. The 365th day, which is, so Hassan, this Satan, is numerical about 364. So there's an extra day in the year, and on that day, he doesn't operate. It's, it's beyond him. He's only Gematria 364. So there's a 365th day, that's, beyond him, that's bigger than him. He can't operate on that day, right? And what's that day? That day is Yom Kippur. This is what Chazal say. So something very interesting to note. The Satan is 364 out of 365, right? So by what cycle are we counting the year when we say that there's 365 days in the year? And Satan is 364 out of 365. And Yom Kippur is like the 365th day, that's beyond, right? So what cycle, there are two cycles that we count time by. There's the lunar cycle and there's the solar cycle, right? The lunar cycle is 354 days long, right? The solar cycle is 365 days long, right? Right, so that means, right? That means that Chazal, are viewing Yom Kippur on the solar cycle, right? As the end of the solar cycle, it's 365th day of the year. Right, the Yom Kippur is the end of the solar cycle. Right, so something very interesting to think about. The lunar cycle is 10 days shorter than the solar cycle. Right? So the new year on the lunar cycle started on Rosh Hashanah, first day of the new year. Right? The solar cycle is 10 days, or it means it's still last year. Right? It's still last year on the solar cycle. It's right now on the solar cycle. Right now on the solar cycle, it's still last year. It's still 5767. right? Yom Kippur is the day where the solar cycle catches up to the lunar cycle, right? So it's the day when, the two tracks meet, the track of the moon and the track of the sun. You know what this is like? What it's like, in us. In us, we have two parts to ourselves. We have a soul and we have a body. Now the soul, in essence, is pure, and the soul always wants to do what God wants, right? It could be corrupted by the body, but the soul's natural, orientation is to do what God wants, right? But what to do, right? As the saying goes, the spirit is strong, but the flesh is weak. In the words of our sages, our sages say that the Jewish people, as it were, in their subconscious, say to God, Ribono Shalom, Ritzayinu Lasos Ritzoncha Mi Makev Sor Shabisa Mishir Makas. God, we really want to do whatever you want, but who gets in the way? The Yetzer Hara and the exile. These things just interfere, but we really want what you want, right? So our soul runs ahead of our body, right? And that's the big cosmic problem. And it runs, parallel to the concept of how the moon runs ahead of the sun, right? The moon runs ahead of the sun, right? It finishes the cycle 10 days earlier, right? And that reality is parallel to how our soul runs ahead of our body, right? Which is why, think about it, this is why, as the Maharal says this is why tshuva is legitimate. What does saying sorry help? Maybe you're just saying sorry to escape punishment. Well, no, we are sincere because, our sin was because of, the weakness of the flesh. But the sin is not the real us. The soul, it's not, its natural orientation is not to sin. And when a person is doing tshuva, he's saying, God, the me that sinned is not the real me. It was the weakness of the flesh that caused the sin. But God, deep down I really want what you want. Right? And that's why tshuva is legitimate. Tshuva says that when man sins, it's because his soul is not in full control. He's also connected to a body, and the body has its weaknesses. And therefore, if a person regrets, we accept the excuse because we're willing to accept, God is willing to accept, that it's not the real him that did the sin. The real him is his intellect, and his intellect is his soul, but the intellect gets clouded by the body and its passions, the Yetzer Hara that's in the body. Right? And the truth is, hear this well, the reason why the flesh is weak, the flesh is weak not because the flesh is innately evil either, God forbid. The flesh is weak because it's adulterated with a Yetzer Hara. It's adulterated, with evil. That's the problem. The flesh is not in essence evil, but the flesh is susceptible to evil. The flesh is the aspect of man that's vulnerable to the Yetzer Hara. So it's not really the body that's evil either, it's how the body is susceptible to the Yetzer Hara. That's the problem. So as it were, the Yetzer Hara makes the body not run at the same pace as the soul. Right? How are we doing? You following me? The Yetzer Hara makes it that the body doesn't keep the same time as the soul, doesn't keep pace with the soul. Okay? Right? So now, but the Yetzer Hara, right, that is the problem that causes the flesh to lag behind the soul, right? So that Yetzer Hara only operates 364 out of 365. So if the solar cycle, that's what I'm saying, the sun, which relates to the body, right? The sun which relates to the body, has, right, the sun that relates to the body lags behind the lunar cycle, right, by 10 days, right? By 10 days, it lags behind, right? And that's because of the Yetzer Hara, right? But the Yetzer Hara that causes it to lag behind, right, is, only operates 364 days out of the year. Right? And the 365th day, so just like, in time, the solar cycle has caught up to the lunar cycle, right? And it's 5768 now on the solar cycle also, because the solar cycle is, we average it out of 10 days. It's technically 10 and a half, right? It's also not, the lunar cycle is not an even 354 either, right? It averages out to about 10, right? Right, so now Yom Kippur is the day where the solar cycle, right? There's no Yetzer Hara, right? The evil which causes the body to lag behind the soul, right? It doesn't operate on Yom Kippur. So on Yom Kippur the body catches up, and that's and really, like we explained, like the Maharal says, tshuva, right? The dynamics of tshuva, why tshuva is legit. Right, why saying sorry works is because God knows, right, that the weakness of the flesh is not the real us. The weakness of the flesh is just the weakness of the flesh, period. Yetzer Hara is a weakness of the flesh. Not even that our body wants evil, like we explained, God forbid. Our body, it doesn't want evil either. It's just that the body is the aspect of man that's susceptible to evil. Right? But the body doesn't want evil either. Right? Right. So, since, when the evil, right, when the evil is, so we accept the person's excuse. We accept the person's excuse that, God, I didn't really mean it, because we know that, his failure doesn't come from the real him. It's not even his real body either. It's the weakness within the body. And during the 10 days of tshuva, that's the declaration that we make. Right, I'm getting there. Right? I'll get there, Abra. Right? Right? So, during all day tshuva saying, God, it's the weakness of the flesh is not the real me. It's not my real body. It's certainly not my soul. It's not even my real body. Right? It's the weakness within my body. Right? So, because we do tshuva sincerely, so we could get the maximum out of Yom Kippur, God allows us to, get the full utility out of Yom Kippur, right? That Yom Kippur is a day where, the evil doesn't function. The Satan that causes the solar cycle, as it were, to be longer than the lunar cycle, causes the lack of sync between body and soul. He only operates 364 days. The 365th day, he doesn't operate, so that which causes the problem is gone. And parallel to that, the solar cycle catches up to the lunar cycle, and everyone knows in the future also, right? Speedily in our days. So in the post-messianic times, the prophets say, the moon will shine as brightly as the sun, because the fact that the moon is so small is also because of this lack of sync between the sun and the moon, so it affects the moon also, right? And at the end of time, this lack of sync, will be repaired, and that's why the sun and moon will move at the same pace, keep the same time, and that's figuratively called being the same size, and that's why the moon will shine as brightly as the sun. And that all, is all how in the big picture, representative of how in every individual, in the future, the body and soul will be in they'll be in sync. They'll keep the same time. They'll run at the same pace. There won't be conflict between the body and soul, right? Because the Yetzer Hara that creates the conflict will be eliminated. And that's parallel to how the moon and the sun shine equally as bright in the future, because the division between them has been eliminated, right? But what we're seeing now is that Yom Kippur is no normal time, right? Yom Kippur is a day of right? Yom Kippur is a day, where things, the moon, running ahead, lunar time running ahead of solar time, right? The prom, the prom immediately starts again after Yom Kippur, right? But Yom Kippur is the day of unification, right? It's a time when both tracks of time blend together, right? I'll give you another chazal. Another chazal says, that sees on a illusion, the first day of creation. So it says at the end, of the first day of creation, Vayever boker yom echad, it was night, it was day, right? It was night, it was day, right? Right, so one day. Doesn't say the first day. It says day one. Yom Echad. Yom Echad. Okay. So the the Medrash says, why is it called Yom Echad? Day one, right? Not called the first day. So Chazal say two approaches. Right? Approach number one is that that God was the one and only on that day, because since the whole world was underwater, there was no separate space. Right? That things should have their own space. That's only once God created open space, and that's on the second day of creation. So on that day there was no open space. Everything was equally underwater. So since everything was equally underwater, there was no concept of separate space. Right? God creates separate space on the second day. When splitting the waters, He makes space. Right? Space. So God was still the only thing in the world, because there's nothing had its perception of being separate from God. That's the Medrash's first approach. The Medrash's second approach is day one. It's the day of unity for both the evil and the righteous. There's a day when they are together. They are together. Right, and that's, what is that day? That day is Yom Kippur. Okay? It's the day when the evil and the righteous unite. Everyone's together. It's unity. That's what we say, in Kol Nidre, Anu Matir Litpalel Ma'avaryonim, we permit, the people, right, we permit, to pray together with the sinners. We make one assembly. Right, there's so again, the way that this is possible, right? Yom Kippur is this day of unity. This day of unity, right? Is that on this day, everything that's called separate, be it the schism between body and soul, the schism between the two different tracks in time, the lunar and the solar, right? All these schisms are closed. And the truth is, all sin comes from schism. All sin comes from detachment. A person feels detached from God. And because of that detachment from God, he views himself as, on his own time, in his own space, and does what he wants. All bad things come from detachment. Be it the detachment between body and soul. Be it the detachment between man and God. Right? The sinner says, let me have my own space. Let me do my own thing. Yom Kippur is the time where all gaps are closed. And that's, and gaps are in time and space. Gaps are in time and space. Right? And, that's time, space-time, as we say in physics. Space-time. So now, on Yom Kippur, that's why, the Kohen Gadol went into, the holiest of holies, right? Yom Kippur, he went into the holiest of holies. The holiest of holies, where all space branched out from. It's the point that all space branched out. In the holiest of holies is the Even Shasiya, right? The stone from which all reality branched out from, right? Right. So, so that represents like all space together. And that's why also on Yom Kippur there were amazing miracles, spatial distortions that happened, that the Jewish people stood, stiff like sardines. They were packed in tight. Omdim tzfufin u'mishtachavim revachim. Right? They stood crowded, but they could bow and spread out. An amazing thing, right? It's like absurd that when they stand straight, they was tight like sardines, and when they spread out on the floor, there's like ample room. Omdim tzfufin u'mishtachavim revachim. Right? Because on Yom Kippur, when you bow before God, so you go back to the point of all space, right? And that that was also represented, when they bowed, when they submit to God, they go back to the point of all space, the point where space branches out from, parallel to how the Kohen Gadol went in, right? Negating self, negating separate space. Negating selfish space. Negate selfish space, you've negated separate space. In separate space, there's not enough room. But in all space, there's plenty of room. You go to God, who's Mekayma Shalaylam, God who is the space of the world. There's plenty of space. And that's also represented by the Kohen Gadol going into the holiest of the holies. All evil is in the concept of selfish space or separate space. But Yom Kippur is the day when all these gaps are closed, right? And just like it's closed in space, it's closed in time. It's closed in time. Nisano, I'm not avoiding your question. I will answer it, I promise, right? But I want to get my point across first. And then I'm going to go back to your question, right? So that's what the Safra says. The Safra, the Medrash says, B'chol Eis, B'chol Eis Ze Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is called not just another day on the calendar. It's all time. Yom Kippur is when we come to the point that is the point of all time and all space. So we said on this time, this is the day where there's no division between solar time and lunar time. It's all time and all space. We go back to the point of origin of the universe. The point of origin is also the point of destination, right? You know that in the future, right? In the future, God will vanquish, right? All evil from the reality, right? All evil will be vanquished from the world, right? And and evil, will cease to exist, and we're going to reach this utopic state that there just won't be any ills in the world, because again, all bad things are rooted in selfishness, which is to separate oneself from everyone else. It's rooted in, right? It's rooted in separateness, right? And in the future, when we get rid of the evil, there won't be separateness anymore. That's why there'll be world peace. There'll be world harmony. And there'll be total harmony between man and God. Right? So Yom Kippur is reminiscent of the first day of creation when there was no separate space, but it's also reminiscent of, for lack of a better word, reminiscent of the future. Right? And that's how, destiny goes full circle. Right? Before God created separate space on the second day of creation, prior to that, he was the only thing in the world, because even though there was matter, but the matter didn't have a perception of itself as being something separate, and independent from God, because separate space doesn't exist until the second day of creation, right? Comes, the future. So what do the prophets say about the future? On that day, God and His name will be one. So you get back to that type of unity with God and lack of separateness that there was prior to the second day of creation. So as it were, the end of creation and the first day of creation is a loop. Right? Just our goal is to find our way back, pierce the separate space that allows for sin, pierce the separate space, and make our way back to God. So to go back to Abraham Katz's second to last post, right, they put up, Yetzirah Tov, Yetzirah take up same space? No. Right? The Yetzirah Tov takes up all space. The Yetzirah exists in the illusion of separate space. Absolutely, absolutely. Nisano, you're right on. Right? But I want to tell you something. I'm going to go back to your question, Nisano. Right? I'm going to go back to your question. Right? You asked that the Gemara tells, a story that a man and his son, did terrible promiscuous acts on Yom Kippur. So I want to tell you something very frightening. This is what the Musar Sfarim say. It is commonly understood that just like Satan doesn't operate, so the Yetzer Hara is a branch of Satan. But a person can pervert himself. God forbid, there's something very scary, something to be on the lookout for. Even though the Yetzer Hara is held at bay, a person who just gives into the Yetzer Hara and doesn't feel bad about it whatsoever can pervert his soul so as he will actually choose to do bad things even on a day when there is no Yetzer Hara, because he's perverted himself. Right? We found, there are stories, that are in the Mekubalim, that souls, even after they leave the body, the Yetzer Hara is in the body, there's something called, perverted souls. That's why they have to go to hell to be cleansed. The soul could be perverted, God forbid. But of course, to reach that low level is that a person sins, without any remorse year-round. We said that, the legitimacy of tshuva is that we say to God, our sinning is not the real us. But if a person feels that his sins are the real him, he will do sins on Yom Kippur also, because it's him, not the Yetzer Hara. He may have started with the Yetzer Hara, but he decided to make the Yetzer Hara and him synonymous. So that person will do sins on Yom Kippur also. God forbid. Something to be on the lookout for. Right? Okay, but on Yom Kippur, what we're saying, there's no separate time, there's no separate space. Right? So, and which means that Yom Kippur is not a regular earthly day. It's a supernatural day. It's different time, it's different space. It's all time. It's all space. Right? And it's not another day on the calendar. It may be, there may be some tenuous link between Yom Kippur and the calendar, because you can't get into the dimension of Yom Kippur unless you come to this day on the calendar, but the essence of Yom Kippur is not another day on the calendar. With this we can understand, a lashon at the Rambam, but the Rambam took it from Chazal. They refer to Itzumo Shel Yom, the essence of the day. The Rambam brings when talking about the special quality of Yom Kippur to atone for sins, the essence of the day, meaning it's not the day. There's an essence connected to this day that's above normal time and space. Right? And this, and this special, this special dimension to Yom Kippur. Yes, Yovel is also beyond time. That's correct, Avram. Right, Yovel is beyond time. That's why all the slaves go free, even though they're sold forever. Yovel is called forever. V'avod olam, serve him forever. Yovel is also called all time. It's called forever. La'olam. That's why Yovel is declared on Yom Kippur, not on Rosh Hashanah. Way to go. Right? So, so Yom Kippur, its special essence, is not just another day. It's like the root of all days, right? It's not another place. It's like the root of all place, right? And that's why, the Ramchal explains, on this day we say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Olam Vaed out loud, because, generally we whisper it year-round, the Ramchal explains, because we're embarrassed. We're being hypocritical. Blessed be the name of God's glorious majesty. Wait a minute. But the world doesn't run as if it's God's glorious majesty. With all the fegelach and all the terrible perversions that are going on in the world, it doesn't look like God's glorious majesty, because very little of the world is acknowledging God as king or following his law. Yes, right. That's correct. Tshuva is beyond time. That's correct. That's what it means. It's was created before it was created. It's beyond time. Tshuva is a power that's above time. That's 100% true. Right? I'll prove it to you. Tshuva fixes the past. Within time, you can never get to the past. But tshuva can fix the past. Tshuva is a time machine. It's beyond time. All right? Absolutely. So this is what we're talking about. Tshuva, in general, Yom Kippur in particular, breaks through to that first day of creation, breaks through to the end of time also. Right? It's the root of all time, the root of all space. Right? That's the breakthrough that there is on Yom Kippur. So so we understand now. Also on this day, it's a different type of day since the Yetzer Hara doesn't operate on this day, because in normal time and space he does. In normal space-time, the Yetzer Hara operates, right? The sun operates, and on this day he doesn't. It shows it's like a whole different, a whole different reality, and that's why we say, "Blessed be, God's majesty." We say it out loud and proud because on this day the world is God's glorious majesty, right? During the rest of the year, there's like a sense of separation between God and His creation. Creation has this sense of separate space. And and that's what the sinner says. I want my own space. I'm on my own time. And these gaps that facilitate that are all closed on Yom Kippur. And when you close those gaps, evil can't exist anymore. You hear it well. Once you close the gaps in time and space, evil's got no more room anymore. So everything that we're discussing, it all they're all functions of each other. The fact that there's no, Ra, there's no evil on Yom Kippur, and the fact that Yom Kippur is all time and all space, these are interrelated ideas, right? There's no room for evil to exist in Yom Kippur because there's no gaps in time and space for him to occupy, and therefore there's also no gaps between the body and the soul in Yom Kippur. So this goes back to something. This goes back to something that Avram Katz asked earlier. Well, if the body catches up to the soul, so why do we have the 5 afflictions? The question is its own answer. Hear this well. On Yom Kippur, since the body catches up to the soul, so therefore on Yom Kippur, the body acts like a soul. And just like the soul doesn't eat, so also on Yom Kippur, the body doesn't eat. You know what it's like when Moses took his body to heaven? So Chazal say, when Moses' body went to heaven, didn't have to eat and drink anymore, it was following the local custom. The way a guest always has to follow the custom of his host. Right? Guest always follows the custom of his host. Chazal say, Azul Karta, Azul B'nimusai. You go to a town, follow the customs of the town. Right? So Chazal said to explain how Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was on earth, he ate the man like everyone else, and he drank the miraculous waters like everyone else, right? But when he went to heaven, he didn't have to eat, he didn't have to drink, he didn't have to fast, he didn't have to sleep, right? It says because when the body went to heaven, it followed the laws of the soul, because it was on soul territory. The body is on soul territory on Yom Kippur, because the gap between body and soul is closed. And the secret of the 5 afflictions is not the pshat to punish the body. On Yom Kippur, the body is on the level of the soul. And these 5 afflictions, as it were, because if the body would do it, it would be that the body's being a body. Right? On this day, the body plays by the rules of the soul. Because this is the day when the gap between body and soul is closed. Right? And that's why it is the day where it's God's glorious majesty. It's why it's reminiscent of the first day of creation where God was the only thing. On this day we could feel that God is the only thing because the separateness that there is in time and space is closed on this day. But of course, only a person who does tshuva could feel this about Yom Kippur. Right? The person who doesn't do tshuva is not going to get this power out of Yom Kippur. For him, it will just be the 10th day of Tishrei. For the Baal Tshuva, there's the Atzmo Shel Yom, the essence of the day that reveals itself for those who do Tshuva. as in the words of the Rambam in the first parak, Atzmo shel yoim mechaper l'shavim, the essence of the day atones for those who do tshuva. Those who do tshuva tap into this dimension of Yom Kippur that's all time and all space and closes the gaps. And when you close the gaps, so it's not tzaddikim versus Rishayim anymore, it's all just the Jewish people. Because the separateness that allows for Rishayim to live as Rishayim is closed on this day. Everyone's tzaddikim. Right? How are we doing? If all the principles are clear, we could go back to answer our questions. How are we doing? If everything's clear, we could go back to start. Okay. So now with this, everything that we asked about the Rambam becomes clear. When the Rambam says Yom Kippur is a time of tshuva, he doesn't mean the 10th of Tishrei. Right? Right. Right. He doesn't mean the 10th of Tishrei. Right. Right. He means it's a time when the whole world goes back to God. It's not a calendar day. When we say Yom Kippur is a time of tshuva, it doesn't mean that because it's the 10th of Tishrei, an obligation to do tshuva kicks in. That's not what the Rambam says, and it's not what he means. Because if that would be the case, like we explained, women would be exempt. It just means it's a time of tshuva. It's tshuva time, meaning the way time works on Yom Kippur, it's a different notion of time. It's a different notion of time, right? It's time that leads back to God. Generally, time space is your sense of, being on your own time and in your own space. Yom Kippur is tshuva time. It's time. The hours of this day is, it has a different mechanic to it. It's time of going back to God, right? Right? And that's why he says for the individual and for the masses, meaning it encompasses all of reality. That's what he means for the individual masses, meaning it's not just for special people, right? Or it's not just for the masses that the masses, Chazal tell us, have special merit. The masses can do tshuva at any time. But Ram's stressing it's Zman tshuva, it's tshuva time, meaning it's a different type of time. It's not a regular calendar day. That's why it has nothing to do with the sugya of whether, of women being potter from time-related mitzvahs. It's different time. It's not regular calendar time. It's tshuva time. For the individual, for the masses, means it's tshuva time for the entirety of reality. Not for the individual who may be outstanding, not for the masses who have great merit, but for both. It's for all, encompasses all reality. And then the Rambam solidifies that. So you cross an edge. It's the edge of forgiveness. The Rambam saying, when we move from Erev Yom Kippur into Yom Kippur, we're crossing over an edge. We've reached the edge of time. We've reached the edge. When we cross into Yom Kippur, we've crossed the edge. We've crossed the edge between normal space-time. We've come to the limits of normal, what we call normal space-time, that allows for the sense of separateness, which allows, room for the Yetzer to get in and make gaps between us and God, make gaps between us and our soul, right? We cross over the edge of that space-time to time of forgiveness, right? This is what the prophet says at the end of the day. God says, I'll look for sins and I won't find it because I'm going to forgive everyone. God's forgiveness, when God forgives, his forgiveness is an act of annulling evil. It's not like when me and you forgive. When me and you forgive, we just say we don't, what you did, you did. I'm just not going to hate you for it anymore. That's our forgiveness. God's forgiveness is of absolute power. When God forgives, his forgiveness causes evil to cease to exist. And that's the prophet says in time, right? I'm going to look for the sins of Judah and I won't find them. Ki eslach la'asher asher, I'm going to forgive everyone who I left. So the forgiveness, God's forgiveness, annuls the evil totally. But it's not that the evil time where there is evil, to the time of where there is slicha mechila. And therefore, everyone must do tshuva to be in step with what's happening in reality, right? But it's not a calendar date. It's not a calendar date. And the obligation to do tshuva over here is not because there's a certain date on the calendar which is tshuva day, but it's more that to be in step with what's happening in reality now, that all of reality is going back to God on this day. This is a day not like the rest of the days of the year. It's not normal time. It's not normal space. To be in step with reality, that's Zman Tshuva. It's time when everything's going back to God and all gaps are being closed. Therefore, everyone has to do Tshuva and confess to be in step with the day. Right? To be in step. Well, you see, Brian, the actual day itself is the power of the future. It's Bina. It's Bina. It's the root of time, right? Since we immediately go back to regular time space afterwards, that's why there has to be more kapara, right? As it were, we don't stay within Yom Kippur long enough. But of course, that which we say, the Gemara says, and the Rambam brings the halacha that there are 4 levels of kapara, the 4 chilukei kapara, but Malchus breaks back to Bina. Malchus, the lower hay goes back to the higher hay. Malchus goes back to Bina. Okay? So the lower hay uniting with the higher hay. Okay? But of course, only God knows. If a person did a very, very powerful tshuva on Yom Kippur, it could be on Yom Kippur everything was forgiven. Right? It depends on where a person's holding. When we say the Arba Chilukei Kapara, that means, generally what's deserved. But God knows the full intensity of how a person did tshuva. A person could do tshuva shlema and not need the Yisurin, or not need the Misa. But only God can know that. Halachically, there are certain standards set by the law. But you understand that a person could, do more, just like a person could do with Min Mishur Sedin, a person could do such an intense tshuva that, he gets treated differently than what the halacha strictly states. Right? So, anyway. Right. So, in the end, Yom Kippur is tshuva time. It's not a date on the calendar to do tshuva. It's tshuva time. It's a different type of time. It's time that doesn't give a sense of separateness from God. It's all time. It's the edge of normal space-time. That normal space-time runs the way it runs because it's adulterated with the Satan, right? And you cross over the edge. Kate's Mechila said, cross over that edge to the area of where there's forgiveness. God's forgiveness is the annulment of evil, and therefore allows us to be in step with what's happening. In reality, everyone must do tshuva. But within regular space-time, which is where the issue of Zman Groma comes up, so that's, that resolves our question of why a woman is definitely obligated to do tshuva on Yom Kippur, right? Right, but, within Zman Groma, right, right, within Zman Groma, right, so, within Zman Groma, there's no particular time to do tshuva. The individual has to awaken himself, right? But but Yom Kippur is not normal time. It's tshuva time. It's over the edge of regular space-time, crossing into it, and to be in step with what's going on in reality, right? A person, therefore, to be in step with what's happening in reality, must do tshuva and confess on Yom Kippur, right? So anyway, I hope I gave everyone a little bit of an insight, what's so special and so awesomely powerful. And when we call these days, going back to another question Avram asked, Yom Noraim doesn't mean that it's days of fear. These days are awesome, and like we say in our colloquial, awesome. The midah of Neira, by the way, is not fear to the exclusion of love. It's tiferes. It's love and fear together. It's love and fear together. Awesome. Neira. Neira is love and fear together. Right? These days are awesome. Awesome. Right? And, the Asher Simei Tshuva in general and how it culminates with Yom Kippur, closing the gap between body and soul, closing the gap between us and God. That's what happens on Yom Kippur. So tshuva, it's a time of tshuva, and that means that the whole reality is doing tshuva on Yom Kippur. That's the whole flow. And anyone who opens his heart a little bit, he has a little pinhole of sincere tshuva, could tap into this power. It's there. It's sitting there. So much power during these 10 days, and there's amazing power on Yom Kippur. There's amazing power. And anyone who just opens his heart a little bit could tap into this and take full advantage. The worship should help. God says, Pischuli Pesach, Kechudo Shomachat, Vanitach and Pesach, Pischol, open your heart, just a pinhole, God says. And I'll open up as wide as a corridor. Right? So there's so much power. And with just a little bit of preparation, a little bit of sincerity, all this power can be accessed. Yom Kippur, Mechaper Lashavin. Right? Why do you do vidui so often? Because the vidui's got to be sincere. You don't know when you're going to be sincere. Right? We hope that between all the viduis together, a person's going to be sincere. Now listen, Nisano, by biblical law, hear this well, by biblical law, right, a person only had to do vidui once during Yom Kippur. Right? The individual, that is. The Kohen Gadol has to do vidui over all the different sacrifices, because that's a halacha in the sacrifice. By biblical law, a person, you're right. Just do a vidui once with full sincerity. The rabbis, it's rabbinic, because all the tefillas, all the prayers are rabbinic, and so in the prayer liturgy, which is rabbinic, so they made us, do vidui in every single prayer, right? So I guess the rabbis felt that just like, they don't want to leave it biblical, that biblically you can also just pray only once a day and that's enough, right? You pray 5 times, so just like you're praying 5 times, you do vidui 5 times. But biblically, you're 100% right. Biblically, one vidui would have been enough. Provided that it's sincere, you understand? Provided that it's sincere. So we should be very happy that the rabbis make us do it, 6 times, really. We start on Erev Yom Kippur, because hopefully between the 6, there's one time we are really, really, really sincere. All of them are equally important, but, the one that's most important is Ne'ilah. It's not just precautionary, but it's, rabbinic. It's a rabbinic requirement. They made it synonymous with the prayer. So, I'm just saying we should be very happy that the rabbis made it, rabbinically binding, because you never know, which one will really be sincere. Because even though biblically once is enough, but it's got to be sincere. Be very happy. We should be very glad that the rabbis, make us do it 6 times. But of course, Ne'ilah is, the most critical one, because that's what seals it. That's what goes, especially according to those opinions, that the power of Yom Kippur kicks in at the end. It's a machlokes, whether that what you say that the Yom Kippur washes away everything, if that's at any given moment, or if that's at the culmination of the day. So of course, Ne'ilah, which is at the end of the day, should be the most sincere one, because according to some opinions, that's when this metaphysical power of Yom Kippur kicks in. We break through to it at the end of the day. So it's where the post can talk about it is if a person, God forbid, gave into his temptation, right, and ate, he ate on Yom Kippur and he started choking, right? He started choking as he ate, and in his heart he confessed and he did tshuva before he choked to death. So he died in the middle of Yom Kippur. He died in the middle of Yom Kippur. Did he get atonement for that sin that caused him to strangle? Like, the reason why I ask about that case, because of course the person had a heart attack mid Yom Kippur for sure. We know Chazal tell us that a person wanted to do a mitzvah and he got cut short, by death or any other thing that barred him. God gives him credit as if he completed. Over here, the guy choked by his own fault, right? Because it wasn't that he was stopped by circumstances beyond his control. Because we know when you're stopped by circumstances beyond his control, beyond your control, God gives you credit as if you completed the project fully, right? But over here, what the post can talk about where the reason why you didn't make it to the end of Yom Kippur was your own evil doing. You ate on Yom Kippur and you choked on your meal, God forbid, right? So a person who felt regret in his heart as he was choking to death, did he have the benefit of Yom Kippur to atone for him or not? So as they say, it depends whether the power of Yom Kippur could be accessed at any given moment or only be accessed at the end of the day. Right? So you're playing, so the one that's most important is obviously Neil, which is at the end of the day. Because according to some opinions, that's when this awesome power that we described, kicks in, meaning that's when you break through to it. I hope I've been clear. If everything's been clear, we'll stop for questions. We'll take questions. All right, I'm not sure what you're asking. Slicha is is God's response to our openly rebelling to Him. Rebellion is when for a pshia, the pshia, God's response to pshia, when we are sorry, is slicha. When we do anything, that's rebellion, right? And for a chet that's done b'mezid on purpose, that's mechila, right? So God, that's what you mean mechila, right? Kapara is for a sin done unintentionally. That's why you bring a chatos, unintentional sin. The carbon is a kapara. So these different verbs are the different responses that we want to get from God, right? I'm not sure the Rabbeinu Yonah is referring to. I'm just saying, I know that the Mepharshim say Slicha is God's forgiveness for Pshia, Mechila for Avon, and Kapara for Chatas. Slicha, Mechila, and Kapara. Slicha for Pshia, Mechila for Avon, and Kapara for Chatas. The forgiveness for rebellion, the forgiveness for intentional sin, the forgiveness for unintentional sin. That's the way I understand it. I mean, that's the way I've seen it in Sfarim. Any other questions? Absolutely. That was my next statement, that if anyone feels they gained anything from me, I ask everyone, if anyone feels any gratitude whatsoever, I want everyone to please pray for me. Mention me at least once in their prayers in Yom Kippur, that I should be sealed for a good year. I should have forgiveness for all my sins and be sealed for a good year. I really want your prayers on my side. My name is Yochanan Meir Ben Shulamis. All right. Anyone who feels that I benefited them in any way, I ask you to please pray for me on Yom Kippur. That God should forgive my sins and inscribe me and my family for life and success. Okay. All right, last call for questions. So everyone down for me, Yochanan Meir Ben Shulamis. Last call for questions. Now, Gemar Chasim, tell everyone, thank you for coming. All right, so thank you. If you feel that way in the saddle, then please daven for me. Yochanan Meir Ben Shulamis. All right, Ephraim. First of all, I want to thank Ephraim for making this possible. All right, on very short notice, Ephraim arranged for this forum. And Ephraim, aside from thanking you, I want to make a request that you kindly post it up. I'm sure as many people came, there's like many, many more that would have liked to come but can't because it's in the middle of the workday, because it's only 4 or 5 p.m. and so Ephraim, please post it. Please post it. People will be looking for it. As soon as the link is up,